When I talk about signs of a female narcissist, I can't tell you how many times I hear the phrase, "That's just how women are." But it's actually your personal experience that has you believing that these red flags are just par for the course. You are not doomed to keep falling for narcissists, but you do need to start believing that you deserve better. And that involves being able to see the red flags for what they are before it's too late. Because if you're picking up on any of these early warning signs of the female narcissist, it might mean that your new love interest is more in love with herself than she is with you. So the first red flag is attention-seeking behavior. If every conversation revolves around her day, her interests, her dreams, pay attention. At first, it might feel kind of flattering that she's so open with you, but soon you realize that she rarely asks about you or seems genuinely curious about your life. You see, early on, a female narcissist might work overtime to get your attention. She may even go heavy on the praise to make you feel special in this early phase of the relationship that we often call love bombing. But as time goes on, you might start feeling drained by her constant need for validation. Compliments that used to make her beam no longer cut it anymore. What happens instead is that she fishes for praise more and more and more and gets moody or mean if she doesn't get it. Slowly but surely, you start feeling like a prop in her life instead of a partner. And of course, not every woman who likes compliments is a narcissist. But if you do notice a consistent pattern of over-the-top, one-sided attention seeking that leaves you feeling used, it's a major red flag. So trust your gut when something feels off. Another thing to keep in mind, and this is why this is so important, is that with a true narcissist, the swooning will turn into criticism before too long. But if it really feels off, remember it's okay to honor your intuition and walk away before you even find out whether or not she may actually be a narcissist. None of this is about labeling the other person. It's all about self-preservation. And here's a comment from one of you who dealt with this firsthand. She'd provoke attention from any stranger in the room, any kind of male, young or old. I stopped going to public places with her, preferring to remain in the car when going out to do groceries. Horrible people indeed. And that exact scenario is pretty common with a female narcissist. So now I want to ask you to make a commitment to yourself and everyone watching here and now. If you're tired of feeling like a supporting character, comment, "I am the main character of my own story," below. When we make declarations like this together, we amplify our intentions and support each other along the way. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Christina, and I'm a narcissistic abuse recovery coach. So if you're struggling with the aftermath of narcissistic abuse and need some extra support, I can help you navigate the recovery process and ultimately reclaim your power. Click the link in the description to learn more. Now back to those red flags. So let's talk about an early red flag that is a major warning sign. And that is lack of empathy. So imagine you're just getting to know someone and you're pouring your heart out about a rough day at work, only to be met with a dismissive, toughen up, or a half-hearted, "that sucks," before she launches into her own drama. You see, narcissists lack empathy, so they have a hard time truly connecting with other people's emotions. They might listen to your problems, but their responses can come off as cold, condescending, or just completely self-centered. And here's a mistake I've seen some men make here. So if you've had a string of relationships where you feel like the women have been over-emotional or demanded you talk about your feelings more than you're comfortable with, in this case, you might be tempted to think, well, she's just less emotional than those women. And so maybe you can circumvent that problem. And maybe she's more like you than your past partners have been. But I caution you to pay attention to how she values emotional needs. Because if she seems to prioritize and value her own emotional needs over yours, it could be a red flag. Because a female narcissist isn't just someone who doesn't like to talk about feelings. She's someone who doesn't care to talk about your feelings, or anyone else's, to be honest. And if you overlook this early warning sign and this becomes a way of life, you may start feeling like your feelings don't even matter, or maybe you're just being too sensitive all the time. So another early warning sign to look out for is manipulative behavior. And listen, I get it. When you're in the honeymoon phase and everything is all sunshine and roses, it's especially easy to miss the early signs of manipulation. But if you find yourself constantly questioning your own judgment or feeling guilty for having totally reasonable boundaries, you might be dating a narcissist. Female narcissists tend to lean heavily on emotional manipulation tactics. So, for example, she might play the damsel in distress, always making you feel like you need to rescue her from some crisis that she probably created herself. And this plays very well against someone who might have a bit of a savior complex. So if that's you, pay close attention to this one. She may also use tears and vulnerability to make you feel like a monster for calling her out on her bad behavior. And now let's talk about the silent treatment. The second you do something she doesn't like, she goes ice cold. She knows that stonewalling you will make you feel desperate to get back in her good graces. So you'll be the one to apologize, even when you did nothing wrong. And these things will come in subtly at first. When you're first getting to know someone, no matter who it is, they're never going to show you the ugliest side of who they are. But you may start to see glimmers of these things before too long. And I want to add that not everyone who comes off manipulative or has maladaptive behaviors is a narcissist. But remember, we're just looking at red flags here. If you're noticing these things early on, it's definitely not a good sign for the future, because over time you might start walking on eggshells around this person so you don't set her off or get shut out. So don't be afraid to call out manipulative behavior when you see it, even if she turns on the waterworks or gives you the cold shoulder. Stand your ground and remember, you deserve a partner who fights fair, not one who always plays mind games to get her way. And here's a great example of the female narcissist's manipulation from the comment section. I had my ex-girlfriend of 4 years always telling me I was neglecting her. I spent every day and every moment with her. I worked, cooked nearly every meal, cleaned everything. I told her every day I loved her, and I always listened to anything she wanted to talk about. Still, I was told I was neglecting her. I have asked family and friends about it, and they said I'm being manipulated. But here's the thing. Now it's been 3 years since we broke up, and I still internally question if I'm a neglectful partner. And this comment really illustrates what happens as a result of manipulation and emotional abuse. The male and female narcissists typically operate in slightly different ways, but the impact on your self-worth and self-esteem is the same. So if you're tired of feeling like you're never enough, comment, "I deserve happiness." And now let's cut to the chase with the next red flag, this sense of entitlement. It's infuriating, isn't it? So if you're seeing any signs of this red flag, pay close attention to how she reacts when things don't go her way. If she acts like she's the main character and everyone else are just extras, you might have a narcissist on your hands. So imagine you're grabbing dinner at a packed restaurant and the service is exceptionally slow. Sure, you're both annoyed, but you know it's not the end of the world. Your date, on the other hand, she's acting like the waitstaff personally wronged her, like it's an attack against her. You see, narcissists have this inflated sense of self-importance. They truly believe they're special and deserve red carpet treatment, even if it means stepping on others to get it. And here I want to mention, if you find independence an attractive quality, you might initially dig that assertive vibe. But there's a big difference between knowing your worth and acting like the world owes you something. So if she's always making big demands and expecting you to bend over backwards to please her, that's not a good sign. Over time, that entitled attitude will lead to nothing but drama and resentment. You'll find yourself constantly giving in to her whims, sacrificing your own happiness just to avoid another tantrum. And I'm going to be blunt with you guys here. The most common reason I hear for overlooking this red flag is physical appearance. So maybe you meet somebody and she's way more attractive than anyone you've ever been with. Or maybe she's 20 years younger than you, and you chalk her behavior up to the ignorance of youth. If you can relate to having fallen into this trap before, a good test for you going forward is to mentally just strip away the superficial things that she's bringing to the table and see if she still seems so desirable. Now, to help illustrate this red flag, I want to share the most popular comment from my last video on the female narcissist. And I also think it's kind of hilarious because with 1,100 likes and 190 replies, it may be the most popular comment on any of my videos. So here goes. Any woman who says, "It is my birthday month," after the age of 25, run. And listen, I don't think there's anything wrong with an extended celebration, but I think what this commenter is getting at is the entitlement of it all. You can't expect anyone to commit to a month of pampering you, ever, really, for any reason. So I have known a couple of people who do celebrate their birthday month. You know, maybe some are narcissists and some definitely are not. But I'm curious what your experience is. Do you know anyone who celebrates their birthday for a whole month? And if so, do they seem narcissistic in other ways? All right, now let's talk about another early warning sign of narcissism: jealousy and envy. Now, this one isn't super gender specific, but with a female narcissist, you may notice this one come up in different ways. So imagine you're telling a story about a funny thing that happened with a female coworker, and your partner starts grilling you about whether you're attracted to her, even though you've never given her any reason to doubt your loyalty. Or maybe you're watching a movie together and she makes snide comments about how the actress is trying too hard to be sexy. You can see the jealousy clearly coming through, even though she's not being aggressive towards you. You see, although they would never want you to know this, narcissists are wildly insecure. They need to feel like they're the best and the only one who matters. So when you show any interest or admiration for another woman, even in a completely platonic way, they take it as a direct threat. And of course, not everyone who's jealous is a narcissist. People who are very insecure can also be very jealous. But if your girlfriend is constantly monitoring your interactions, blowing up over innocent things, or trying to isolate you, that is not healthy, no matter who it is. And over time, that stuff can really get to you. So you might find yourself going out of your way to avoid mentioning other women, or you may start feeling like you've done something wrong after something simple, like engaging in small talk with another female. So listen, if you can relate to this and you're tired of walking on eggshells around someone else's insecurity, comment, "Trust is a must," below. I think it's a good motto for your next chapter. Would you agree? And here's some really great insight from the comment section. I had the misfortune of being involved with a series of narcissists, and all of them were incredibly jealous. And also, they would flirt with other men to the point of almost making me believe they were sleeping with them. All right, so let's talk about the next red flag: difficulty accepting criticism. If she can't handle even the slightest critique without reacting in defensiveness, anger, or denial, it could be a sign that you're dealing with a female narcissist. So here's how you might spot this early on. Imagine you're a few weeks into dating and you notice she's always running late. So you gently bring it up, suggesting that maybe you could both work on being a little more punctual. So maybe you have more of your time to spend together instead of waiting. But then she blows up at you and accuses you of being controlling and nitpicky. Suddenly, you're the one apologizing, even though you were just trying to have an honest conversation. And in this example, you even took a little bit of the blame when it wasn't yours to soften the blow, which you shouldn't have had to do. But you see, this happens because narcissists have a hard time with anything that challenges their perfect self-image. In their mind, they can do no wrong. So if you suggest otherwise, they take it as a personal attack. They'll often respond with defensiveness or anger. They might even just shut down the conversation entirely. And of course, no one likes to be criticized, but most well-adjusted adults can handle a bit of constructive feedback without losing their cool. So if you notice that she constantly flies off the handle or plays the victim whenever you express any concern, even minor stuff, that is a major red flag. If you ignore this one, just know that you're probably going to be in for a life of walking on eggshells. So definitely pay attention to these early cues. Any real connection requires open, honest communication. And that includes being able to give and receive feedback without it turning into World War III. So now let's look at a comment from someone who knows exactly how defensive a female narcissist can be. She always went silent whenever I confronted her with what she did. Couldn't apologize or take criticism. If she did apologize, it was, "I'm sorry it made you feel that way." And always said, "Stop being a baby." So if you can relate to that comment and you're done with all of that, if you want a partner who can handle honest communication, comment below, growth over ego. All right, let's move on to the next early warning sign of narcissism in dating, and that is a lack of accountability. If she always seems to have an excuse for her bad behavior or a way to shift the blame, pay attention. You might be with a female narcissist. So imagine you've been seeing someone for maybe a month or so, and you notice she has a habit of bailing on plans last minute. When you bring it up, instead of apologizing or acknowledging your frustration, she turns it around on you. She says something like, "Well, I wouldn't have to cancel if you didn't make plans so far in advance." Suddenly, you're the one feeling guilty or defending yourself, even though she's the one who flaked again. You see, narcissists have a hard time taking responsibility for their actions. In their mind, they can do no wrong. So if something goes sideways, it must be someone else's fault. And they'll pull out all the stops to make you believe it. So they'll often use manipulation tactics like gaslighting or playing the victim to avoid having to own up to their mistakes. And of course, like all of the other early warning signs, we're looking for patterns here, not just one-off things. Because really no one likes to admit when they're wrong. But if you notice that anyone consistently refuses to apologize or acknowledge her role in conflicts, that is a red flag. So what ends up happening over time is that you might start questioning your own perceptions and wondering if you're the one who actually is always in the wrong. And whether you believe you're in the wrong or not, you'll find yourself constantly apologizing, just because it's probably a lot easier. So listen, if you can relate and you're tired of dealing with a narcissist's lack of accountability, comment below, I deserve better. So now let's talk about another big red flag, exploitation. So if you notice that she's always asking for favors, or you feel like she's using you for your resources, pay close attention and know that this may come on gradually. So everything might be great, and then suddenly it seems like she's always asking you to go out of your way for her. And maybe she borrows money from you, but never seems to pay it back. Or she expects you to drop everything to help with her problems, but is never there when you need support. You see, this happens because narcissists view the people in their lives as tools to be used for their own personal gain. And it tends to work because they use charm and flattery to draw you in. But ultimately, they're going to exploit you for whatever they can get, whether that's your time, your money, or your connections. Or maybe it's just your emotional energy. And I know some of you are probably thinking, well, that's just in my nature, and I don't want to stop helping people who need my help. And the good news is you don't have to stop being you. You can still be giving. But if you're starting to feel like the giving is always one-sided, then it's a problem. Because then eventually it's like they're sending the message and you're gonna feel like you're only valued for what you can provide and not who you are as a person. And once the trauma bond takes hold and you feel like it's difficult to leave this relationship, you may find yourself giving more and more of yourself, only to be left feeling drained and unappreciated. So if your gut is telling you that you're being used, listen to it. And here's a comment from one of you on exploitation that I think brings up an interesting discussion. This commenter says, I'm autistic and we have zero natural defenses against this. My ex exploited my autism ruthlessly. And I know that not all of you are going to relate to that comment, but I chose to add it here for those of you who may actually feel the same way. It always helps to know you're not alone. So another early warning sign we need to talk about is unrealistic expectations. So if you feel like she expects you to be perfect, and notice she gets upset when you inevitably fall short because you're human, right? And none of us are perfect. She has unrealistic expectations. And maybe, just maybe, she might be a female narcissist. Definitely pay attention to patterns and look at all the signs. So here's how it may show up early on. Imagine you've been seeing someone for a few weeks, and at first, everything's awesome. But as time goes on, you start to notice that her praise comes with a lot of pressure. She expects you to always be available when she wants to hang out, even when it means canceling your own plans. And sometimes, especially when it means canceling your own plans. These things happen very often with narcissists because they have this idealized vision in their head of what their perfect partner should be like. So they might build you up at first, making you feel like you're the most incredible person they've ever met. But the moment you fail to live up to that impossible standard, they'll start to devalue you. If you ignore this early warning sign, you might start to feel like nothing you do is ever good enough. Like you're always letting her down somehow. And you may find yourself twisting into knots trying to anticipate her every need and desire. Here's a comment from one of you who dealt with this firsthand. Entitlement was the worst with my covert narc ex. I can't raise a child in this house, and you need to get another job. Well, she only worked part-time and I worked full-time. Unfortunately, you can and will never be good enough for a narcissist. So if you feel like you're on that hamster wheel, maybe it's time to get off. Now, here's an early red flag you might even be able to spot on the first date. And that's a history of unhealthy relationships. So listen to how she talks about her past relationships. If she has a string of toxic exes and seems to always be the victim in her past relationships, this is a red flag. And listen, not everyone who has bad relationships is a narcissist. I know even some of you have had a string of toxic relationships too. And maybe you could find that kind of backstory relatable. But here's the difference. You've probably taken some accountability for your behavior in the relationship, whether it's in your reactions to their toxic mess or how long you put up with it. Someone who isn't a narcissist is more likely to lead with the lessons rather than the victim story. But the other side of it is the narcissist who also has a history of tumultuous, drama-filled relationships. And this is true because they tend to seek out partners they can control and manipulate. And when that person inevitably breaks free, the narcissist plays the victim. And they'll often rewrite history, painting themselves as the innocent party who was wronged, rather than acknowledging their own toxic behavior. And here's the kicker. Oftentimes they do believe that victim story. They believe that whatever they did, that other person deserved it. And they look at the other person's reactions in a vacuum. So they don't look at their accountability there. And they don't self-reflect on all that happened. Like you might. So bottom line, if your girlfriend's relationship history reads like a series of horror stories where she's always the blameless heroine, don't take those stories at face value, unless, of course, you want to be included in her next chapter of Crazy Exes. So if you're ready to break the cycle of dating narcissists and find a truly healthy, loving relationship, comment never again below. So we've got those early warning signs covered, so you can avoid falling into the female narcissist's trap in the future. But if you miss those red flags before, you're definitely going to relate to the signs you're in a relationship with a female narcissist. The video that just popped up on the screen will tell you exactly what happens if you don't heed those warnings. So give that a watch, and if you haven't already, be sure to like this video before you go. And I'll see you next time.